Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I have a special guest today, Rabiah Coon. And Rabiah Coon is a London-based stand-up comic from California. She's also a marketing manager for a tech consultancy and the host of her own podcast, More Than Work, which I was very lucky to be a guest on recently. And yeah, I'm excited to have Rabiah on the show because your journey is interesting and organic, and you've talk about marketing and you have a podcast, and I thought that it would be inspiring to bring you on the show and share a little bit of your magic with this audience. It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur. So would you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you ended up getting to where you're at right now?
Yeah, definitely. So currently, like you said, I work in marketing, like marketing manager at a company, but I was at that same company. I was the project manager or one of them for about 5 years. And so this was a big pivot and shift for me in my career. And it just came as a result of partly me talking to different people about what I was looking for ultimately, which wasn't just to be a project manager. It's like a skill set I have, but I'm really passionate about my creative side. And so now I'm getting this opportunity because just having those conversations and someone seeing that. And when that position opened up at our company, saying, why don't we give you a shot and then see how it works out? And so it's lucky because at this point in my career, I'm about 20 years into it. To get to shift like that is amazing and really low risk. And I got to London with this job because I ended up getting sent here or to Europe quite a bit for different projects. And they finally said, hey, we're looking for you over there. Why don't you just go over there? So that's how I ended up here and doing this. And then the podcast came out of the pandemic partly. I mean, I podcasted before and I love the medium, but it came partly out of some soul searching I was doing about what I wanted to do with my career before I got this new job. And just then me wanting to have conversations with others about how they were really, my podcast is More Than Work. So it's defining themselves outside of just their job title, because I faced burnout and self-worth issues many times because of my job. And I just wanted to help people with that. And comedy, awesome. Just, I'm not being funny right now, but I'm a comedian too. So.
Yes, you don't have to be funny all the time to be a comedian. That's true. I want to highlight one part of that story, especially because I teach marketing and I have a background of being a vagabond hippie with, an art degree and a lot of years of bartending and making art and just traveling nomadically, but also kind of aimlessly. And that if you told my younger self that I would be teaching marketing and helping people grow their businesses, I would have laughed in your face. And what you found was, without a background in marketing, which, some people ask me, oh, did you go to school for business? It's like, no, I really didn't. I just found a passion for it later on. And then it became what it is now, that you were feeling this part of yourself that was being underserved in your profession. And that you were willing to show up and say, you know what, I have this other part of me. And can it be utilized? And then boom, the universe was like, yes, it can. Here's an opportunity to go and utilize that and put it into action and, create more fulfillment and energy in your life. I'm curious, was there much like resistance or fear or whatever when that came up as an opportunity?
There was, kind of just because of my nature. My nature is to doubt myself in a way. And then I'll kind of know what's right, but I'll also doubt myself. So it came from me, but then a good friend just said, I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. This is what you would want to do. Like, this is what you wanted to do. And I said, yeah, you're right. It is. And I was just kind of more of a self-doubt thing, but the decision was easy because I felt good about it. I've had different decisions for work and in moving home and stuff like that, where I've felt almost sick over it. And it turns out it was the right thing to do. And in this case, I actually felt like I would envision, I sometimes will, I don't know if a lot of people do this, but I'll envision myself saying yes and how that feels and saying no and how that feels. And in this case, like saying no felt really bad because I knew then I was closing the door because it wouldn't come up again. But saying yes, I felt like good. And then I also knew that there's a safety net. Like I'm a good project manager. So if it didn't work out, I could just go back to that,
Mhm.
and so, but yeah, a lot of it came from the gut saying, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And I feel really lucky and grateful about that.
That's awesome. And that's such a
Yeah.
powerful tool for people to use when you're looking at making a decision. It's not just about pros and cons, it's also about the energy of how does it feel if I was going to say yes to this? Does it expand or does it contract how I feel about me, how I feel about my future? Like, does the energy feel light or heavy? And that you organically just did that to make that choice is amazing. I had a similar experience to that a few years ago before my business had really gotten a lot of traction. I thought, okay, well, maybe there's a way I can do this for someone else's business. So I was in negotiations to get hired by a multi-million dollar organization to basically do what I was trying to do for my business, but they would be handing me clients and using me, and I would be an employee instead of a business owner, basically. And when the final, like, we were in negotiations and they sent a final proposal or whatever for the job that I would be taking, before I even opened the email, I felt a full body no. And I knew that it didn't matter what it said in there, how much they had met my desires or whatever, I couldn't possibly
Yeah.
say yes to it. And that exact same couple weeks, I think within a couple weeks after that, my business like blossomed. And within 6 or 8 months after that, I had my first $10,000 month. And I know that that would not have happened if I had said yes to that job, because it was a job. Even though I was going to be
Yeah.
coaching and doing my thing, it wasn't the same situation as what I was trying to create and what I really wanted. So I love that. And it's so important to, I think, let our bodies participate in the decision making process,
Yeah.
because that energetic awareness sometimes is more a physical sensation than it is a cognitive intellectualization, a
Yeah.
knowing. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
for
cool.
sure.
Yeah. So tell us more about your podcast and the kind of guests you have on there. I know there's podcast listeners listening to this show, and I'm
Yeah.
sure some of them like to hear about new shows and what's going on over there.
Yeah. Thanks. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. So it's called More Than Work, and you've been on, and I really loved your story. And so it's going to be a great episode. And the thing is, it's really just the tagline is like reminding you that your self-worth is more your whoa, reminding you that your self-worth is more than your job title. And that could be any job. I had a Mother's Day special last year where two of the women, it was four people on the show, or three people on the show and me, and two of them are stay-at-home moms and one is a working mom. And that's a job where also like your self-worth is impacted, but then also these careers we have, all of us. And so I'll interview guests. Most of the time I'll have one or two of the episodes of just me talking, but basically they're guests from everywhere, and it's just talking to them about their path and how they got to where they are. And where they are might be either they're doing side things, like I'm doing comedy on the side, for example, or they're in a job that maybe they went into nonprofit or some other kind of career from a different one. Like I had a guy who was the CTO of a company and now he runs a bicycle company because that was what he wanted to do. And so he's working the same amount, but it's for a different thing. And just a whole like range of guests. So it's pretty fun. And anyone who wants to listen, I mean, just pick a guest that you think looks cool and go with it. But everyone's pretty interesting. And I think everyone has a story to tell. It just depends on where to tell it and kind of how to frame it. But that's one thing I like about doing it too. But also the aspect that maybe it helps someone do something
Yeah. I mean,
eventually.
it's a really important reminder that life is more than work, which this society
Mm-hmm.
kind of tries to tell us that our value is based on our income or on our vocation.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the first questions we ask someone when we meet someone for the first time is, oh, what do you do? Like we're trying to
Yeah.
place their being inside of some kind of box context that we understand or we can
Yeah.
quantify. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's so much more to people than that. What I love to talk about, I mean, I love helping people find how to bring that more than work part of themselves into their
Mm-hmm.
work. Because for me, I know synthesizing all those aspects of ourselves into what we do for a living just makes having to make money so much more fulfilling and fun and energizing. but
Yeah.
that is almost an impossible task because we are such multifaceted beings, especially, you know, what one of my mentors calls the DLOSs, that does lots of stuff. It's like, how could you
Mhm.
even possibly bring all the aspects of you into what you do? But it's fun to try and see, what part could be included. For me, spirituality, while I started my business in a deep spiritual kind of methodology modality, when I started teaching marketing and business and strategy and technology and automation and tools like that, that part of myself and that part of my like passion wasn't being included. And so it took a couple years to really synthesize that back in. And now I feel so much better about it because I get to teach marketing from the angle of energetics and consciousness and spirituality and stuff like that, which is so cool.
Yeah.
So I took a comedy class from my dear friend Jennifer Mason. Actually, I
Oh,
took an improv class from my friend Ted DeMaison and a stand-up class from my friend Jennifer Mason during 2020 when, you
a
know,
Jennifer I know then, I think.
you know
In
Jennifer
San Diego.
Mason?
She's in San Diego.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
yeah.
her.
She's one of my good
Yeah.
friends.
Oh, weird. Okay. Well, yeah, no, she's great. I've met her and we performed together on a show before.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, how
fun.
cool. But yeah, so for me, I love jokes. I actually have like many friends and family in my life that will just send me a joke every time they hear a new joke because they know how much I love them. So trying to quantify my life into stand up, which is like taking a mundane thing kind of and bringing the funny out of it, or like
Yeah.
finding the thread of like humor inside of some moment of our lives. It's challenging, but it's also so satisfying to be like, I made this thing and wow, it's funny. And then having other people respond to it is really exciting. So how did you get into stand up and like what has that done for you as a person in your life? Because I know there's a transformational process for many that do that.
Sure. Yeah. So it's funny because what I like about being on here is being able to talk about a spiritual side of myself that I don't talk about very much. It's just not what I end up talking about. But I wanted to do comedy for probably 15 years before I tried it. I would say at least, just from being the funny friend who people said, "Oh, you should do comedy," but to also it being a feeling like a need. And one thing like Brene Brown, who I follow a lot, says like those creative things don't go away if you don't kind of use them. They just kind of they stay there and they kind of almost rot inside. And so I think comedy was doing that in me really in a way. And I just didn't have the self-confidence, like body image issues, stuff like that, to get on stage. And finally, I just made a pact with myself when I was about around 30, said, look, by the time I'm 40, I have to get on stage. I didn't have the goal of having kids or buying a house or whatever. That was my goal. And so I was 39 when I took a class. For me, I, for some reason, have this need to like validate myself with education and kind of, I feel more bona fide if I have education. I don't think people need to go to comedy class to do comedy, but for me, that's what I needed to do. So that was my first step. And then I just, I really loved it. And I think the first class session, I got up to the mic and I didn't get the note that we had to like prepare something. So I didn't. So we just riffed. And then that's when I wrote my first joke, which is the joke I tell almost every gig. And yeah, it felt good. Yeah, I mean, sure. So you want me to do a bit? This is like an annoying thing comedians do to people.
I'm into it.
All right. It's a little bit, well, you can edit if you don't want it in. So it's about my name. So, and I've iterated it on it a little bit. So I'm going to do most of the joke then. So my name is Rabiah Coon. It's a unique name from what I've been told. Probably not as a compliment, but anyway, Rabiah, my first name, it's actually Arabic. I'm half Lebanese. It's the kind of name where people, when they mispronounce it, you'll correct them and then they'll say it incorrectly again as though they're just suggesting their own pronunciation of it for you. I get called Rabbi when I pick up my coffee at Starbucks, like, Rabbi, here's your latte. And I just say shalom and I move on. And then my last name, which is Coon. It's spelled Coon. So it's the bad spelling of Coon, honestly. And my name is unique because it's both ethnic and racist at the same time. That's it. I don't know.
Awesome. Yeah.
It's a bit edgy.
Yeah, but it's such an interesting process to take the normal of your life and be like, how is this funny? And I feel like even after the class was over and I had done my 5-minute time and we had like a Zoom meeting because it was COVID times, I was still looking at every aspect of my life of like, oh, this could be funny. Like somebody left their grocery cart behind my van in a grocery like store parking lot one time, and I backed up and it broke a taillight, and I was immediately thinking like, this could be a bit, I think. I didn't end up turning it into a bit, but those silly moments of life, it's kind of the same thing as what I preach about leadership, which is as a leader walking through the world, bullshit is still going to show up in your life. Like hard times and challenges and like garbage moments are still going to show up. But a leader takes those and finds the golden thread and the lesson through it, and then broadcasts that, saying, you know what, this was a hard thing and here's what I'm turning it into. And I feel like stand-up comics kind of have to do that same thing of like, here's this weird aspect of life, and like, here, look at how it could be funny, or what could be funny about it.
Yeah, and not everything funny that happens to you will be a bit. There's some things that just belong at the dinner table with your friends, but some of them, like my name thing, like I've dealt with my name for, quite a long time in different ways. And so that's just the way I finally expressed the thing, right? Like, this is what it is ethnic and racist. And that's the part, people have said different things to me about it, but I think what's cool with comedy and with storytelling in general, how whatever form of it or writing or anything, is just you're getting things out and getting a reaction to them, whatever that is. And sometimes it's just for you, and then that's okay too,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Do you have any advice, like if somebody is either considering going into learning more about stand-up or trying it, or even just somebody who's considering getting on stage and finds a lot of fear about that, what would be your advice to someone like that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, getting started, look, if it's something you want to do, I think you should, just because there's no actual barrier to entry. Now there's a barrier to becoming famous and, elite comic, fine, but there's no barrier to just going to an open mic night and getting on stage. It's just you going. And no matter what you think, it's rare that something so awful is going to happen that anyone's even going to be talking about it. Like most of the open mic people are there for themselves. They're not there to worry about you. If you're really good, they might not like you, but if you're not, you're nothing to them. But I think what I've found, I think the best advice I got, and I don't remember who gave it to me, is like when you go on stage and if you have a great night and everything hits, or you have like the worst night and everything bombs, and that feeling's horrible, and you just have to go through it and just feel it. Either way, your next step's the same. It's to look at what worked and what didn't, and then to do the next gig. That's it. It doesn't change. Like if you had the best gig ever, you don't go to your next gig and have the best gig ever again. And if you have the worst one ever, you don't do that again. It's just, you do the next one and you see what happens. And Bob Saget, actually, I was listening because he just passed, and I was listening to him on a podcast, and he was saying like, or it was maybe him or Mark Maron, but they said, you're only as good as your last gig. And that's pretty much it,
Yeah. So if you bomb, don't let that be your last gig. And if you did great, see how great your next gig could be.
Yeah. And then if you want to go out on a high note, go out on a high note, but go and do it. Don't not do it. And don't wait 10 years, because then you're going to be like me and go, I should have done this 10 years ago. So
yeah, totally. And I'll relate that back to business and marketing. Like whether you launch your program and it bombs or it like rocks, you still want to look at what worked and what didn't work and then launch your next program. And if you go live on Facebook or have a speaking gig or do a workshop, whether it is wild success or not, you want to still be asking that question: what worked about this and what could be improved? How could I do better next time? And then put that next time on the fucking calendar and make it happen.
Yeah. Book the next, whatever it is, book the next gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good advice. Awesome.
Good.
So I also want to ask your advice about the career shift thing, because I know for you, it was like not a whole lot of risk to make that leap and move in a different direction because it was an opportunity, but you knew you could fall back on your previous like job description or whatever.
Sure.
So somebody's thinking about leaping into a new career path and maybe they don't have so much of a safety net. What would you tell to them?
Yeah. And I've talked on my podcast, I end up talking to a lot of people. Ends up being a theme is people shifting, and a lot of people have a spouse that they can fall back on and stuff like that. And I think the thing is to be planful about it and be intentional about it, and to have the runway. Like don't make yourself like, don't just have no money in the bank and then just quit your job and start the next one and hope it's going to work. I mean, because you have to take care of yourself still. And I really feel like very strongly about taking care of yourself involves many things. One is like finding employment that satisfies you, and that's taking that leap, right? But the other things are making sure you still have food and shelter and clothing and all that stuff. And so I think my advice would be to not try to tell the future necessarily, but do try to plan for it, if that makes sense. So like, if you think it's going to take 6 months to get off the ground, is there a way for you to like sustain yourself until then? And that could be moving. I moved in with my mom for a while, like when I was about 38, just because I hated where I was living and needed a break, and I paid rent to her, and it was easy, right? Because I wanted to move back to California, but didn't want to go right into an apartment. I know people who have moved back in with their parents, or they moved in with friends or whatever, but just have a support system and a way of like managing yourself while you're doing the thing. So your cup's like not empty while you're doing the thing, if that makes sense. I would say plan, and if it doesn't work out, then try to like forgive whatever you need to in yourself quickly so you can move on. Because sometimes I think we treat ourselves really badly and it inhibits our future growth,
Absolutely. Really great advice. Yeah, I did the same thing in the very beginning of my business. I moved back to my mom's. Well, it was after a breakup. So I was like starting at ground zero again anyway.
Yeah.
But I give that advice to like new entrepreneurs who are really trying to explore and find their perfect niche. When you're growing a business or when you're looking at a new opportunity like that, also, there's a lot of exploring and there's a lot of discovery and there's a lot of like, it can be a lot harder to explore and to try and follow your nose and like get feedback and pivot and turn if you're desperate for income. If you're relying on this new opportunity to be your main source of financial well-being, it can be a lot more stressful and a lot less exciting to be in that exploration phase, which is required to find really the path that you're on. So I definitely recommend people keep their job while they're building their side hustle if they can, or again, like you said, to lean into whatever support system they have so that they're not trying to squeeze the tube too hard and actually are willing to find what's in there. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so 100%. I'm sure people are listening to this, want to follow you and figure out, where your next comedy gig is and how to get attached to your podcast. What are the best places for people to go and find you?
So on all the socials, I have at More Than Work Pod and at Rabiah Comedy. And then I have a website. It's rabiahsaid.com. So it's RABIAHSAID.com. And that has all my dates on it. And if you heard something and you want to chat, or you think you'd be a good guest or something, just let me know. But I'd love to hear feedback from people. And I appreciate you having me on for sure. Yeah, I'm super grateful to have you on. And you've shared some magic on this episode for sure. And before we click off, I like to ask people, are there any last words of wisdom you want to leave with people with? Sure, that'd be great. I'd say just the thing that's resonating with me at this moment is just, everyone says it too, but don't worry about what other people think. Just if you'll know if you're on the path you should be on. So just keep going and try. And if it fails, then do the next thing, but don't worry about what other people think of that either. That'd be my thing. Totally. Really great advice. And even if you are actually really like wildly satisfied with your vocation, that's okay too. Yeah. Don't listen to this and be like, oh no, I'm supposed to be dissatisfied with my thing, and so now I need to go find something new. No, trust your instincts. If it's time to pivot, it will be. I mean, it will be clear. My mom always says that the right choice will be obvious. And if it's not time, then that's why it's not obvious yet. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Cool. Well, I'm super grateful to have you on the show. I'm hoping at some point I can make it to one of your stand-up gigs because I love comedy and I think that would be really fun. And I want to say thank you to all of our listeners out there for being podcast friends, and definitely go check out More Than Work by Rabiah Coon. And we'll catch you next week for another episode of Tactical Magic. Have a great day. Dun, dun.